All right, YouTube, buckle up because what I just went through could give a soap opera writer ideas for years. I'm Noah Blake, 34 years old, and I'm here to tell you how my father took the landscaping empire I built from nothing, handed it to my older brother Logan because he has mouths to feed, and how I walked away, only to watch the whole thing crash and burn.
Let's rewind.
My dad. Frank Blake is 67. Picture a grizzled old-school landscaper, calloused hands, sweat-stained cap, and a beard that smells like gasoline and fresh grass. He's worked himself ragged since the 70s, taking on every odd job this town had to offer, just to keep a roof over our heads. While other kids spent their summers at the pool or glued to PlayStation, I was learning about mulch composition and irrigation ratios. I loved it. Even as a kid, I knew I wanted to grow this thing into something big. Then there's Logan, my golden boy older brother now, 41. Growing up, Logan couldn't have cared less about yard work. He was too busy chasing girls, partying, and rolling his eyes whenever Dad or I asked him to help rake leaves. In high school, he called landscaping manual labor for people who didn't go to college. But something changed when Logan was 17. He was in a bad car wreck coming home from a party. The other driver ran a red light, and Logan was hospitalized for almost 4 months, multiple surgeries. Doctors said he might never walk properly again. Dad practically lived at the hospital during that time. I was only 11, and while I stayed home mowing lawns to help with bills, Dad was by Logan's side every minute, holding his hand, bringing him his favorite meals, helping with therapy exercises. That near-death scare cemented their bond in a way I could never compete with. Dad saw Logan as the miracle son who almost didn't make it, and me, well, I was just there, dependable, quietly keeping things running in the background. And that dynamic never changed. In high school, I worked every summer and every weekend with Dad's tiny landscaping company. By the time I graduated, I enrolled at the local community college for horticulture and landscape design, while Logan partied his way through a business degree at a private university. After college, Logan took a corporate job out of state, but I stayed working side by side with Dad, helping his struggling company stay afloat. When I officially joined full-time at 23, Dad had 3 aging trucks and about 40 clients. We barely scraped by, but I had vision. I started bidding on commercial contracts. I networked with developers and property managers. I pitched big projects and followed up on every lead. I even brought on 2 amazing partners who became family to me. First was Jake Porter, a 6'5" bear of a man who'd worked for Dad forever, but never had anyone recognize his talent. Jake could outwork any 2 guys and was a master at organizing crews efficiently. He became my right hand on the ground. Second was Mia Grant, a landscape designer with a gift for transforming boring yards into luxury spaces straight out of architecture magazines. Mia had left a cushy corporate job because she wanted creative freedom. I convinced Dad to hire her full-time. With their help, we turned Blake Landscaping into a serious business. In 5 years, we quadrupled revenue. In 10 years, we'd gone from a ragtag family outfit to a respected regional leader with over 35 employees, 20 trucks, and high-end contracts with corporations, HOAs, and even a local university. I was running everything: finances, hiring, client relations, marketing, equipment, purchasing, you name it. Dad still liked to be out there mowing lawns occasionally, but truth be told, Blake Landscaping was mine in everything but paperwork. And while Logan occasionally dropped in during family holidays and acted so proud of what we built, I later found out that behind the scenes he was whispering doubts in Dad's ear. Mom clued me in one night after Thanksgiving dinner. Logan says you're a hard worker, but maybe not a big picture thinker, she confided. He thinks when Dad retires, he should take over for stability's sake. Because he's married with kids. That stung. I had sacrificed everything for this business while Logan was off playing office politics in his corporate world. But what really set everything off was when Dad, after 40 years of marriage, suddenly announced he was divorcing my mom. His excuse: I want to live while I'm still young. Young, the man was nearly 70. Then came his whirlwind romance with Olivia, a 31-year-old personal trainer who was barely older than Logan's oldest daughter. Within 6 months, they were married. Dad bought a fancy new condo downtown, traded in his battered pickup for a Tesla, and suddenly cared more about designer sunglasses than soil pH. It was embarrassing, But nothing prepared me for the bombshell he dropped at a family meeting one rainy Tuesday afternoon. I thought it was a business discussion, maybe even an overdue conversation about formalizing a succession plan and making me a partner. Instead, Dad sat Logan and me down, cleared his throat, and said, "I've decided it's time for me to step back from the business and enjoy retirement. And since Logan has a family to support, I'm giving Blake Landscaping to him." I froze. I'd given him the best years of my life. I built this company from a mom-and-pop shop into a $2 million a year enterprise. And now he was just handing it over to the brother who had mocked this work his whole life. When I looked at Logan, he didn't even pretend to look surprised. In fact, he smirked and said, "Noah, I'm sure we can work something out. You can stay on as operations manager. I'll handle strategy." The arrogance, the entitlement. That night I didn't sleep, my mind was racing. But by morning my rage had burned away, replaced with icy clarity. If Dad and Logan wanted Blake Landscaping so badly they could have it, I was walking away. But I knew something they didn't. Without me, that empire was going to crumble and fast. Because no one, not Dad, not Logan, not Olivia, understood the beating heart of that business. I was the heart. And now I was done giving them my lifeblood. The day after that so-called family meeting, I walked into the Blake Landscaping office like nothing had happened. I didn't storm out or slam doors. I sat at my desk and got to work answering emails, checking inventory logs, and scheduling crews for the next week. But inside, I'd already decided this was my exit. I wasn't going to beg, fight, or argue. If they wanted this empire without me, let them try. After hours, I called Jake. We met at the diner where we'd shared countless late-night meals after long workdays. The minute he saw my face, he knew something was up. "What's going on, Noah?" he asked, putting down his coffee cup. I told him everything. How Dad had blindsided me, how Logan was planning to take over, how they expected me to keep running the business like nothing had changed but answer to Logan as the new boss. Jake shook his head slowly, his face darkening. "That's disgusting. After everything you've done, Noah, you built this place." I just nodded. "I'm leaving, Jake. I've decided. But here's the thing, I'm not just walking away to lick my wounds. I'm starting my own company. Clean break. New name, new reputation, but I can't do it alone." Without hesitation, Jake leaned forward. "I'm in." That was all I needed. The next call was to Mia. When I explained the situation, she didn't even let me finish before she cut in. "Tell me where and when. I've had one foot out the door ever since Olivia started showing up at meetings asking about branding opportunities. Logan won't know a landscape design from a sandbox. With my two most trusted people on board, my next step was crucial clients. The relationships I'd cultivated over the past decade weren't just business transactions. I knew their kids' names. I sent handwritten thank you notes. Every holiday I checked in personally when storms damaged their properties. They didn't work with Blake Landscaping, they worked with me. One by one I called them. Some were shocked, some furious on my behalf, but almost all of them said the same thing. Where you go, we go. By the end of that week, I had verbal commitments from over half our commercial clients, including some of our biggest accounts worth hundreds of thousands annually. And I wasn't reckless about it. I made sure every conversation was respectful and legal. I never badmouthed Dad or Logan directly. I simply told the truth. Frank has handed the company over to Logan. I'm stepping away to build something new. I'd love to continue working with you, but it's your choice. Their choice was clear. I found a small industrial property on the edge of town, a perfect spot to house equipment and trucks with enough office space for our new beginnings. I signed a lease, ordered new signage, and filed the paperwork. Blake and Porter Landscapes. Jake deserved that recognition as much as I did. In the evenings, I was making lists, designing logos, ordering uniforms. My savings, nearly $130,000 I'd quietly accumulated over the years by living frugally, gave me just enough runway to launch. In the mornings, I was still showing up to Blake Landscaping, fulfilling my duties professionally and quietly winding down my involvement. I didn't burn bridges. I simply moved carefully, methodically, making sure nothing tied me down when I left. When I finally handed in my resignation 2 weeks later, the eruption was immediate. Dad called me into his office and slammed the door shut. His face was red with anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing? You can't just leave us like this right now when Logan needs you most." I stayed calm. I'm giving you 2 weeks' notice just like any employee would. Logan is the new owner, you should ask him to figure it out. Logan stormed in mid-conversation, arms crossed. This is sabotage, Noah. You're walking away just when we're restructuring. You'll ruin the company if you do this now. That word sabotage made me smile. No, I said, this isn't sabotage, this is self-respect. Neither of them understood what I meant, and honestly, I didn't care anymore. The day after my last shift, 5 crew leaders quietly called me and asked to join the new company. We know where the real leadership is, one of them told me. Logan doesn't have a clue how to run this show. Jake organized our first full staff meeting at the new yard. 11 employees showed up, people who trusted me, who believed in the work we had done together, and who wanted a future with a leader they respected. That morning, standing in front of them in a warehouse that still smelled of fresh paint and sawdust, I felt a rush of energy I hadn't felt in years. We weren't just starting a new business, we were building a family. A real one. And the clients delivered on their promises. Within a month, Blake and Porter Landscapes had contracts locked down with enough work to keep us busy for at least 6 months. Word spread fast in the local industry, our crews were skilled, our designs fresh, and our service professional. Meanwhile, back at Blake Landscaping, things were unraveling quickly. Logan, it turned out, had absolutely no idea how to manage field crews' equipment, maintenance scheduling, or client relations. The first red flag came when one of our former suppliers called me to say Logan had tried to return a bunch of specialized equipment we needed to maintain those large commercial accounts. He said it wasn't cost-effective, the supplier told me, laughing. I could almost picture Logan's spreadsheet in hand treating everything like a theoretical exercise, while crews on the ground struggled without the right tools. Then came the first wave of clients calling me not just out of loyalty, but because Blake Landscaping was failing them. Late crews, shoddy workmanship, missed deadlines, equipment breaking down. It was happening even faster than I thought it would. By month 3, several large clients told me outright, "We're canceling with Logan, we're moving everything to you." But things got even messier. One evening, Mia and I were reviewing project plans when she paused and said, "Did you hear the rumor about Logan? Apparently he's charging clients new management fees that didn't exist before." I frowned. How much? 30% markups in some cases, she said. For nothing, just padding invoices. I couldn't believe it, but at the same time I could. Logan didn't know how to build value, so he tried to manufacture it through made-up fees. And worse, he was billing those same clients while cutting corners, rushing crews, and buying cheap materials. The arrogance was staggering, but I stayed focused. Every time a client called, I took the high road. I thanked them for reaching out, promised them our best work, and never said a negative word about Blake Landscaping. And slowly but surely, we were growing faster than I'd even dreamed. But behind the scenes, I could sense something darker was coming. Clients weren't just canceling contracts with Blake Landscaping, they were starting to whisper about Logan's accounting practices. Suppliers were grumbling about unpaid bills. Even former employees who had stayed loyal to Dad out of respect were now reaching out, hinting at chaos inside the office. And that's when Maria called me. Maria had been Dad's office manager for nearly 7 years. She was quiet, meticulous, and absolutely loyal to the business until she couldn't stomach what was happening anymore. "Noah," she said, her voice low, "can we meet? There's something you need to see." That meeting would change everything. Because the mess Logan was making wasn't just incompetence. It was fraud. When Maria asked me to meet her, I didn't hesitate. We chose a quiet corner of a local cafe far from anyone who might recognize us. She looked exhausted, her eyes shadowed like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't waste time on small talk. "Noah, I'm sorry for how this has all gone down," she began, her fingers nervously twisting a napkin. "I tried to stay loyal, but I can't ignore what's happening anymore. Logan he's doing things that just aren't right." My stomach tightened. I'd suspected poor management, but her tone suggested something worse. "What exactly is he doing?" I asked. Maria pulled a thick folder from her bag, placing it on the table between us. "He's been inflating invoices to clients, adding ridiculous charges for executive oversight and strategic management consulting. I thought it was a one-off at first, but it's become systematic." I flipped through the paperwork. There were copies of invoices with 25% to 40% markups fees that never existed under my management. And then I saw something that made my blood run cold: payments to a company called Logan Consulting Group. I checked the address, listed it was Logan's personal home. Maria leaned in, speaking in a hushed voice. That's not all. He's been using the company credit card for personal expenses, private school tuition for his kids' dinners at fancy restaurants, even a vacation to Disney World. When I questioned him, he told me it was all for client entertainment and strategic retreats. It was blatant theft, and Maria wasn't done. He also asked me to start deleting old financial records, said they were cluttering up the system and not relevant to his new era of management. I told him I couldn't do that without authorization from Frank. He backed off, but I could tell he was desperate. That desperation would be his undoing. Maria handed me the folder. I kept copies of everything: bank statements, credit card bills, invoices. It's all in there. I can't stay much longer. I've already put in my notice, but I thought you should know. I thanked her quietly, knowing this folder was dynamite. When I got home that night, I spread the documents across my dining table. There was no doubt Logan wasn't just failing as a manager, he was actively looting the company, tens of thousands of dollars siphoned off under the noses of both clients and my father. I didn't rush. I knew better than to act impulsively. Instead, I called my lawyer, Amy Caldwell, first thing the next morning. Amy was sharp, meticulous, and tough as nails, a perfect ally in this kind of fight. After reviewing the paperwork, Amy looked at me across her polished oak desk and said simply, "This is fraud, clear as day. Invoice inflation, misuse of business funds, paying himself through a shell company. All of it prosecutable." Her advice was to document everything thoroughly and avoid direct confrontation. "We want this airtight before we act," she said. "I recommend filing a complaint with the district attorney's office and notifying the IRS, but we'll wait for the right moment." Meanwhile, my own business, Blake & Porter Landscapes, was thriving. Our new team worked like a well-oiled machine. Jake's crews were efficient, Mia's designs were winning praise and awards, and clients were sending referrals faster than we could handle them. Every day brought confirmation that leaving Dad's company had been the right choice. But back at Blake Landscaping, the cracks were widening. Luis, a longtime equipment supplier, called me one afternoon. "Noah," he said, his voice heavy, "Logan's demanding a 10% kickback on every invoice. Says it's the cost of maintaining a preferred vendor relationship." My jaw tightened. "You've got proof?" Luis didn't hesitate. "Every payment I've made to him is documented. I even recorded our last conversation. I'm sick of this man. I did business with your family for years and never dealt with this nonsense." Then came the call from Sarah, the account manager at West Point Office Park, one of Dad's oldest commercial clients. "Noah, we need to talk," she said. "Since you left, invoices from Blake Landscaping have jumped 35%, and they're adding weird charges for executive inspections and premium vegetation analysis." I met her the next day. Sarah laid out the invoices side by side before and after Logan took over. The difference was obvious, and when I asked whether the work quality matched these new fees, she laughed bitterly. "Their crews are late, sloppy, and half the work isn't even done. We're paying for premium services and getting amateur results." Her frustration mirrored what I was hearing from nearly every former client. Blake Landscaping's reputation, carefully built over years of honest, excellent work, was disintegrating in just a few months. And Logan, he was too arrogant to notice. But I did. With Amy's guidance, I began compiling a detailed dossier. Maria's records, Luis's receipts, Sarah's documentation, and sworn statements from crew members who had witnessed Logan's shortcuts and shady practices firsthand. We weren't just preparing a complaint, we were preparing a reckoning. While this storm gathered quietly behind the scenes, Blake & Porter Landscapes was flourishing. We hired additional crews, expanded into snow removal services for the winter season, and even landed a contract with a large hospital campus, something I'd dreamed of for years. Clients were loyal, not just because of my name, but because they respected our professionalism, consistency, and attention to detail. Every job we finished reinforced the truth people weren't loyal to Blake Landscaping, they had always been loyal to me. And yet, despite my success, part of me still carried the sting of betrayal. I'd built Blake Landscaping's empire from the ground up. Logan hadn't earned a single ounce of what he inherited, and now he was destroying it. Maria's final call came just before Christmas. "Noah," she said softly, "Logan just asked me again to delete old financial records, and this time he seemed frantic. He knows he's drowning." I thanked her for everything she'd done. "Don't worry," I told her, "your conscience is clear. You've done more than enough." That night, I sat alone in my small office, reflecting on everything that had happened, the sacrifices I'd made, the loyalty I'd shown, and how little any of it had mattered to Dad when it counted. But as I looked at the growth of my own company, the dedication of the crews who followed me, and the trust my clients placed in me every day, I realized something important. Logan hadn't stolen my future. He'd freed me to build a better one. And now, it was almost time for the truth to come crashing down. The new year arrived quietly, but under the surface, everything was about to explode. Amy had spent December meticulously preparing our case. By January, the dossier was thick with evidence, fraudulent invoices, kickback records, financial statements, Maria's meticulous documentation, and statements from clients and suppliers who'd been burned by Logan's greed. The next move was deliberate. Amy filed a formal complaint with the district attorney's office, accompanied by a well-organized packet for the IRS detailing Logan's unreported income, fraudulent markups, and misuse of company funds. We didn't announce it. No angry phone calls, no confrontations, just a quiet submission to the proper authorities. And then we waited. Meanwhile, Blake and Porter Landscapes was soaring. Word of our professionalism spread faster than I could have imagined. We'd hired 30 employees by February, with crews working in 2 counties and a backlog of contracts keeping us busy for 6 months solid. Mia's designs were winning local awards, and Jake's crews were getting glowing reviews. Every day we succeeded felt like quiet justice, but I knew real justice was coming. By late February, rumors started swirling. Logan was having trouble retaining employees. The workers who stayed complained about late paychecks and disorganized job sites. Equipment was breaking down. Suppliers were tightening credit terms. Some even demanded payment up front after too many delays. I heard from Luis again. Noah Logan tried to negotiate down his outstanding balance with me. Offered half, said he's tight on cash. It was astonishing how fast things were unraveling. Logan had no understanding of cash flow, crew morale, or operational realities. He thought running a landscaping business was like managing spreadsheets from a corner office while ignoring the people and relationships that actually kept it alive. But then, just as I suspected, the real blow landed. Early one morning in March, Amy called. "It's happening, Noah," she said calmly. "The DA's office executed search warrants this morning at Blake Landscaping's office and Logan's house." I froze for a second, then took a deep breath. Logan's downfall wasn't just inevitable, it was overdue. Later that day, the news broke publicly. Local media ran the headline, "Local business owner under investigation for fraud." There was Logan's mugshot splashed across every outlet, his smug, overconfident expression from that family meeting long gone, replaced by a pale, exhausted face that looked like it had aged a decade. The news reports were merciless. They outlined everything: the inflated invoices, the sham consulting fees paid to his own shell company, the fraudulent management charges, and the misused business credit cards. The article quoted a source from the district attorney's office describing Logan's scheme as a textbook example of systematic embezzlement. I didn't gloat publicly. I kept my head down, stayed professional, and focused on my own company. But privately, I felt vindicated. More clients started calling almost immediately. Even those who had been hesitant before now wanted nothing to do with Blake Landscaping. Within 2 weeks, several large accounts officially terminated their contracts with Dad's company and signed new agreements with Blake and Porter Landscapes. Our staff swelled to over 40 people. New trucks rolled into our lot. The energy in the yard every morning was electric. At the same time, I learned that Dad had been blindsided by Logan's arrest. He called me 2 days after the news broke, his voice hoarse, sounding like a man who'd finally realized the magnitude of his mistakes. "Noah," he began, almost whispering, I didn't know." I let him speak. "I thought Logan had the right skills, you know, the family, his kids. He needed the business more than you did. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone. I never imagined." His words trailed off. He didn't have to finish. I knew exactly what he never imagined, that the golden son he'd favored for decades would betray not only me but him too. I stayed quiet, letting the silence between us do the talking. Eventually, Dad said, "The business is ruined. I can't keep it going. The clients are leaving. The employees are leaving. I don't even know how to fix this." There was a long pause, then he added, almost pleading, "I wish I could take it all back." But it was too late for wishes. I didn't lash out. I didn't tell him all the things I could have. The betrayal still hurt too deeply to even put into words. Instead, I just said calmly, "I hope you find peace with your decisions, Dad. But I have my own company now, and it's doing just fine." That was the last real conversation we ever had. Blake Landscaping declared bankruptcy 3 months later. The shop was shuttered, the trucks were repossessed, the employees scattered. Dad had to sell his house to pay legal fees and settlement costs from civil suits filed by angry clients who had been defrauded. And Logan. He eventually accepted a plea deal: 3 years in federal prison, 5 years probation after release, and court-ordered restitution payments totaling over $250,000 of money he didn't have and would likely never repay. His wife filed for divorce while he was awaiting sentencing, moving with their kids back to her parents' house. The family Logan claimed to be providing for was gone before he even entered his prison cell. And Dad, his new wife Olivia, the one he married in secret, divorced him as soon as the money dried up. It was poetic, really. But for me, life was better than ever. Blake and Porter Landscapes continued to grow. We expanded into 3 counties. We added snow removal, outdoor lighting, and high-end pool capping to our services. Our clients weren't just satisfied, they were delighted. We became known as the most reliable professional landscaping company in the region. Every morning I arrived at our yard before sunrise and watched crews load trucks and head to job sites, proud of what we'd built. Not just a company, but a team, a family built on trust and shared purpose. Jake would always say, "Noah, you didn't lose when they betrayed you. You won. You won your freedom." And he was right. Looking back, that betrayal was the greatest gift Dad and Logan could have given me. They forced me to leave a broken legacy and build something better from scratch. I didn't just survive, I thrived. And as for Dad and Logan, their names became a cautionary tale in this town, a reminder that trust is earned, loyalty matters, and you can't fake competence forever. Even as Dad's empire collapsed, I kept my focus forward. I didn't dwell on the news coverage, even though every headline about Logan's trial felt like an exclamation point on years of betrayal. My team at Blake and Porter Landscapes didn't ask me much about it either. They didn't have to. Everyone knew why we worked so hard and why we did things differently here. The crew leaders often joked about Logan's downfall during breaks, but I stayed out of those conversations. I didn't need gossip. I had everything I ever wanted. Now my own company, loyal clients, and a team I respected. Business was booming. We expanded our shop to accommodate the increasing fleet of trucks and trailers. Mia's designs kept winning awards at state landscaping competitions. Jake was training up 2 new foremen who were thriving under his guidance. It felt like the future I had dreamed about for a decade was finally here, and it was better than I imagined. But the shadow of my family's implosion still followed me in quieter ways. Every so often, I'd drive past Dad's old shop, now sitting empty, A for lease sign hanging crooked in the window. The lot was overgrown weeds sprouting through the gravel where I'd once parked trucks with pride. It felt surreal to see it abandoned so soon after all those years of sweat and sacrifice. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't feel spite or even sadness, just a quiet sense of closure. The past belonged there now, in that empty lot with the trucks Dad could no longer maintain and the clients who had long since walked away. Meanwhile, we were building something different at Blake and Porter. Our reputation was no longer just about excellent work, it was about how we treated people. Clients called us reliable, fair, professional. My crews showed up on time, completed jobs with care, and cleaned up like the property was their own. It wasn't just landscaping anymore, it was trust. That spring, something happened that surprised me. Maria, the former office manager who had bravely come forward with all the records that sealed Logan's fate, stopped by our office. She'd found a new job managing accounts for another small business, but she came to drop off a card. On the front, in careful handwriting, it said simply, "Thank you for doing the right thing." Inside was a short note. "You saved this town from a dishonest man. You should know how much that mattered." I'm proud to have worked with you." It meant more to me than any award or contract. Maria had never wanted drama, she just wanted to work for people who treated her and everyone else fairly. After she left, I sat at my desk and thought about all the people who had put their trust in me. Through this transition, my employees, my clients, my partners. And I realized that what we'd built wasn't just a business, it was a community. But one person I hadn't heard from since Logan's arrest was Dad. Not a call, not a letter, not a word. At first, I thought maybe he was too embarrassed. Maybe he couldn't face me after everything that happened. But then I heard from one of our old suppliers that Dad had taken a job with another local landscaper, a small outfit that did mostly residential yard maintenance. "Your old man's just a crew leader now," the supplier told me. "He's out there pushing a mower 5 days a week." There was something poetic about that. After all the grandstanding about succession and strategy, after favoring Logan because he had a family to feed, Dad had come full circle back to the basic work he'd once done with pride. But he wasn't the same man. His reputation had been wrecked, and every contractor and supplier in the county knew what happened. Olivia, his much younger second wife, had filed for divorce within weeks of Logan's sentencing. As soon as the money dried up, so did her affection. She disappeared from town altogether. In the end, Dad was left with nothing but the mower he pushed every day, a humbling reminder of how quickly fortune can turn. But even with all that, I didn't feel bitterness anymore. I felt free. Blake and Porter continued expanding. By the end of that year, we were employing over 50 people and had landed a multi-year contract with a regional hospital system, a dream client. Jake's crews handled the winter snow removal with incredible efficiency, and Mia's designs were now featured in 2 national industry magazines. We were even getting requests for consulting work from firms outside our region. Clients respected us. Employees respected me. And my phone was constantly ringing with new opportunities. And in the middle of this success, I found something else I hadn't expected: peace. No more fighting for approval from a father who never saw my worth. No more competing with a brother who didn't respect the work. No more carrying the burden of keeping someone else's name and business alive while they took me for granted. At Blake and Porter, every success felt like my own. Every thank you from a happy client felt like proof that I hadn't wasted those years building my skills and reputation. And personally, my life was finally on track too. That spring, I proposed to Sarah, the woman who'd stood by me through the worst of this family drama. She said yes immediately, her smile lighting up a chapter of my life that felt like the exact opposite of everything I'd left behind. When I told Jake and Mia, they both grinned and told me it was about time. Even better, Sarah had ideas for how we could improve our business further. She was an accountant by training and started helping us refine our financial systems, making our books stronger and leaner than ever. Together, we weren't just building a business anymore, we were building a life. And with every passing month, the shadow of Dad and Logan faded further. They had chosen their path. I had chosen mine. Clients occasionally still brought up Blake Landscaping when they signed contracts with me. "I can't believe what happened over there," they'd say, shaking their heads. But I never engaged in gossip. I just nodded politely and promised to take good care of their property. Because that's what mattered now, showing people what respect and professionalism looked like. Jake liked to sum it up best. Logan thought he could fake leadership. Your dad thought loyalty was about family ties. But you, Noah, you proved loyalty comes from showing up, doing the work, and doing it right. It was the highest compliment anyone could give me. Even years later, I kept Maria's thank you card in a drawer at my desk. Whenever I doubted myself, I'd pull it out and remember exactly why I walked away and exactly why it was the best decision of my life. As time passed, what amazed me most wasn't just that Blake and Porter Landscapes had succeeded, it was how complete the transformation felt. I no longer carried the bitterness that weighed on me in those first few months after walking away. I no longer felt haunted by Dad's choices or Logan's betrayal. In fact, I rarely thought about them at all. But life has a funny way of bringing things full circle. One afternoon, about a year after Logan's sentencing, I was on site personally checking a large commercial job when a familiar face walked up. It was Dad. He looked smaller, somehow, older, thinner, quieter than the man I remembered. His work shirt was faded. His cap pulled low and his boots were scuffed. We hadn't spoken since that call after Logan's arrest, I wasn't sure what he wanted, but I set down my clipboard and nodded politely. He hesitated, then said, "Noah, I just wanted to say congratulations." I raised an eyebrow. "Congratulations." He gestured toward the trucks parked nearby, clean, neatly lined up, proudly displaying our logo. "You built something real here. I see your crews all over town now. Everyone talks about your company like it's the best thing that's happened to this community in years." His voice cracked on that last sentence. I didn't respond immediately, I just listened. "I didn't understand back then," he continued quietly. "I thought Logan needed the business more because he had a family. I told myself I was protecting him. But the truth is, I didn't see you clearly. I didn't see what you were building right in front of me. You deserved better from me, from all of us." It was an apology, but it came too late to fix anything. Still, I felt a strange sense of peace in that moment. "Thanks, Dad," I said simply. He nodded, then offered a small, tired smile. "Anyway, I'll get back to work. Just wanted to say that." And just like that, he walked back toward his beat-up truck, climbed in, and drove away back to his modest job with a small-time landscaping crew. That was the last time I saw him, but his words didn't leave me bitter. If anything, they felt like the final chapter of that part of my life, one I could finally close for good. Blake and Porter Landscapes continued to thrive. That summer we expanded again, this time adding a full design-build division, specializing in outdoor kitchens, luxury patios, and poolside landscaping. Mia led that team with her signature creativity, and the projects coming out of that division were soon featured in regional lifestyle magazines. Jake was promoted to operations director, overseeing all field crews and mentoring a new generation of leaders who'd come up through the ranks under his guidance. And Sarah, she became an integral part of the company's leadership. Her expertise in finance and strategic planning helped us navigate every challenge with confidence. Clients trusted us not only to design and build beautiful landscapes, but to stand behind our work with integrity. In many ways, we became exactly what I always hoped Blake Landscaping could have been, if only Dad had trusted me then the way my team trusted me now. But I didn't regret the way things turned out. Every obstacle, every betrayal, every disappointment had led me here, and here was a life I wouldn't trade for anything. Sarah and I were married that fall in a quiet ceremony at one of the parks I had personally helped design years earlier. A place where stone pathways curved through wildflowers and native grasses, where carefully placed lighting made the space glow softly as twilight fell. Standing there surrounded by friends, employees who felt like family, and the clients who had become part of this journey, I felt something I hadn't known I was searching for all those years. Contentment. The kind of contentment that comes not from winning some contest or proving a point, but from building something real, honest, and lasting. Later that night, as we danced under the stars, I caught myself smiling at how far I'd come. There was no resentment left for Dad, no anger toward Logan. Their mistakes had set me free. The clients who'd once worked with Blake Landscaping never even mentioned my family anymore. To them, Blake and Porter Landscapes was its own respected brand, a symbol of reliability, excellence, and professionalism. When new hires asked about the company's history, I never told them the whole story. I just said, "We built this from the ground up. We take care of our people and we stand by our work." That was enough. In the years that followed, we continued to grow slowly, carefully, never chasing growth for its own sake. We expanded our footprint thoughtfully, hired carefully, and kept the same core values that had built our reputation in the first place. I took pride not just in the balance sheets, but in the people we trained, the apprentices who became foremen, the clients who stayed with us for years. It felt right. And one day, when I have children of my own, I'll tell them this story, not as a tale of revenge or bitterness, but as a lesson about resilience, about knowing your worth, about walking away from those who don't value you, about building your own table when you're denied a seat at someone else's, and about how the best kind of success isn't the kind you rub in anyone's face. It's the kind you live quietly every day with gratitude. I didn't just survive what Dad and Logan did. I became stronger because of it. And as I sit here now writing this down and reflecting on the journey, I can finally say without hesitation, I'm exactly where I was meant to be, and I wouldn't change a thing. Story 2. I was halfway through the first sip of my lukewarm office coffee when the unknown number flashed on my phone. Something in my stomach twisted even before I answered. "Hello, is this Emily Carter?" The voice was polite, almost bored. Yes, I said, trying to sound just as calm. This is Charles from Liberty National Bank. We're calling regarding an overdue mortgage, $523,000. The rest of his sentence blurred. $523,000, I didn't own a house. I didn't even own a reliable car. You must have the wrong person, I managed. Ma'am, the documents list your full name, date of birth, and social security number. Loan opened 3 years ago. 3 years ago, right when my younger sister Jessica had been fantasizing about a forever home she couldn't afford. The call ended with a stiff promise to look into it, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely set the phone down. I tore through every drawer in my apartment, searching for some clue that would explain the mix-up. Deep down, though, I already felt the cold blade of betrayal sliding between my ribs. There was only one set of people who had all my personal information, and one of them had been looking for a shortcut ever since she was old enough to spell shortcut. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the hairline cracks in my ceiling and replayed every family dinner where Jessica was showered with praise while I washed dishes in the background. The responsible one, Mom called me. Translation, the convenient one, the one who'll keep quiet. By dawn, I was at the kitchen table laptop, open tabs multiplying mortgage fraud, forged signatures, what to do when family steals your identity. I called the bank again and asked for copies of the loan paperwork. 10 minutes later, a PDF landed in my inbox. There it was, page after page of my name, my details, my signature. It looked close enough to fool a stranger, but not close enough to fool the hand that had signed job applications and rent checks for the last 10 years. My real signature has a nervous hook in the Y of Emily. The forgery's tale was picture-perfect and practiced. Seeing it felt like watching someone pick my pocket in slow motion, then smile for the camera. I should have cried. Instead, I felt something quieter and heavier settle in my chest, like wet cement hardening around a steel rod. This wasn't just about money. It was about being erased, turned into an easy line of credit because I'd never been the noisy one. Mid-scroll through horror stories of identity, theft, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Hope you're having a good week, family dinner Sunday. Like everything was normal. Like my name wasn't shackled to $500,000 of someone else's dream kitchen. I typed back, sure, and hit send. Before I confronted anyone, I needed the full picture, and I needed a plan. Sunday would be the stage. I refused to improvise. Sunday showed up wearing the same cheerful mask my family always loved. Their lakefront house looked exactly like the brochures Jessica pinned to her vision board's white siding wraparound porch, a manicured lawn that probably cost what I paid for rent. When Mom opened the door, she greeted me with a powder-scented hug. So glad you could make it, sweetheart. Inside, Dad sat half watching a football game, beer balanced on the armrest. Jessica lounged on the couch, scrolling her phone, a designer purse tossed beside her like a prop. Dinner smelled like pot roast and lemon cleaner nostalgia and new money mixed together. I took my usual chair, heart thumping hard enough to shake the silverware. Nobody noticed. They were busy praising Jessica's gorgeous new backyard and complaining about landscaping bills. I waited. Let them get comfortable. Plates cleared, small talk fading. I spoke as evenly as I could. Quick question. Does anyone know anything about a mortgage in my name? Silence snapped across the table like a dropped tray. Jessica tugged her sleeves down. Mom's smile drooped. Dad coughed into his fist. No confessions, no apologies, just a family of bad actors caught without a script. Mom jumped in first. Honey, listen. Jessica just needed a little help qualifying for the loan. It's not like you're paying anything, sweetie. Jessica's voice sharpened. You have great credit, Em. I don't. And family helps family. Why are you making this weird? Not a big deal, just paperwork. The words floated between us, casual as crumbs. My jaw tingled with the urge to scream, but I kept my voice low, almost gentle. Thanks for explaining. Relief spread around the table. Crisis apparently averted. Dad turned back to the game. Jessica picked up her phone. None of them saw the storm quietly forming behind my eyes. They thought the old Emily, the one who swallowed every slight, was still sitting there. They were wrong. I drove home on autopilot, white lines smearing into a single ribbon. Their phrases replayed family, helps family, just paperwork. Every sacrifice I'd ever made to be the dependable daughter, the one who didn't need attention, came back coated in rust. Inside my cramped apartment, I opened my laptop again. This time, I wasn't Googling symptoms. I was mapping solutions lawyers who specialize in mortgage fraud steps to remove your name from a fraudulent loan, how to sue family members without nuking your credit in the process. The world felt sharper, colder, but for the first time in years, I felt awake. If they expected me to roll over, they didn't know me at all. I wouldn't shout or beg. I would be precise, methodical, and unflinching. Somewhere around 2 a.m., after outlining timelines and evidence lists, I closed the laptop. I wasn't sure exactly who I was becoming, only that she wouldn't stay invisible. Tomorrow, I'd find a lawyer. After that, a police report. The path would be long and ugly, but it would be mine, and it would be silent until it wasn't. Mr. Warner looked nothing like the sleek TV lawyers who promised miracles before the commercial break. He was in his late 50s, hair the color of printer paper, left in the sunsuit, rumpled from actual work. We met in a downtown coffee shop that smelled of burnt espresso and stale hope. He slid my file across the table, thick as a phone book, and tapped the cover with a chewed-up pen. "Identity theft, forged mortgage, 6 figures. Family members?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "Parents and a sister," I answered, voice low so the barista wouldn't hear. He nodded like a doctor confirming a broken bone. "All right, first we file a police report today, then a written dispute to the bank. We request a fraud investigation and a temporary freeze on the loan. While that's churning, we talk civil suit damages, credit repair, maybe punitive if the judge is in a mood." His tone was calm, almost clinical, and that steadiness soothed the part of me still flinching. I signed engagement papers, handed over the retainer check that ate half my savings, and left with a to-do list stapled neatly to my future. The police station was colder than the January wind outside. Fluorescent bulbs hummed overhead as I recited the story for a stone-faced desk sergeant who typed so slowly the keyboard seemed to protest. When he stamped the report, "Identity theft criminal fraud case, 4 to 25. A strange heat bloomed in my chest. Fear, relief. Maybe both. Either way, it was official. Now my family had committed a crime, and I had named it. I walked out into sunlight that felt too bright for the day, and mailed the certified dispute letter at the post office next door. The clerk slid it into the outgoing tray with a casual thunk, unaware the envelope held the first crack in my parents' perfect facade. 3 days of silence followed, 3 whole days where no one from home called, texted, or rang my bell. Part of me expected an apology parade. Mom's tears, Dad's bluster. Jessica's wounded princess act. Instead, there was only the hum of my refrigerator and the tick of the wall clock counting down to whatever came next. On the 4th evening, a car door slammed outside. I peeked through the blinds and saw Mom storming up my walkway, hair unbrushed, lipstick crooked. I opened the door but left the chain on. "How could you drag police into this?" she hissed. "Not even a hello. Do you know what you've done to this family?" I kept my voice level. I protected myself. It was a misunderstanding. Jessica needed help qualifying. Her eyes blazed with an anger I'd never seen aimed at me before, anger reserved for outsiders, never for golden children. "Misunderstandings don't usually involve forged signatures," I said. "She's your sister Emily, family sacrifices." I almost laughed. Sacrifice is voluntary. Theft isn't. Then, before my courage wavered, I shut the door, slid the deadbolt, and leaned against the wood, while her muffled protests faded down the steps. I didn't cry afterward. The tears had dried up sometime between the police station and that slammed door, replaced by a hollow ache that felt suspiciously like freedom. A week later, Liberty National sent an email mortgage account placed on hold, pending fraud investigation. "No payments due," from Emily Carter. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. A hold wasn't a victory, but it was a ceasefire, and that was enough to breathe. Jessica's texts hit my phone that night, 12 in a row, alternating between fury and pleading. "You're ruining my life," morphed into, "I'll fix it. Just withdraw the complaint." I muted the thread and went to bed. With the crisis paused, my life cracked open in unexpected ways. Saturday morning, I wandered the farmer's market, bought sunflowers I had no vase for, tasted summer peaches that dripped down my wrist. I signed up for a beginner pottery class because the flyer said no talent required, which felt like permission. Shaping clay was messy, humbling, weirdly meditative. The instructor, a bearded man named Cal, kept saying, "Let the wheel do the work." My bowls came out lopsided, but I loved them. Their imperfections proof my hands could build instead of just defend. Evenings, I hiked a woodland trail behind the apartment complex, listening to my breath sink with the crunch of gravel. I'd spent years walking on eggshells. Sturdy ground felt miraculous. Meanwhile, Mr. Warner shepherded paperwork through the legal labyrinth, affidavits, subpoenas, notarized statements. Every few days, he emailed updates in bullet points, each one a chisel chip at the fraudulent loan. My credit score, once nosediving, began to twitch upward. The bank's internal audit finally confirmed what we'd known. The signatures were forged, income documents bogus, the title company negligent. Next step was civil court. We filed suit against Jessica, and by extension, my parents' co-conspirators who had provided information knowingly and willfully. That phrase made my stomach flip. Mom and Dad distilled into a legal accusation. I expected rage. Instead, the family chat went eerily quiet. Birthdays passed without emoji cakes. Group photos disappeared from social media as if deleting them could erase me. The silence stung, but it also clarified. When someone stops speaking, you hear the echo of what was never said, years of unacknowledged effort, unseen compromises. I filled the space with new sounds: wheel whir, hiking boots, the soft thud of wet clay on a table. 3 months after the initial call, Liberty National sent a certified letter loan, officially voided due to fraud. Emily Carter released from all liability. I held the envelope to my chest like a passport. Debt-free not by gift, but by grit. The same week, court set a mediation date. Jessica would have to face me across a conference table, lawyers present. I steeled myself for impact, but she postponed twice, citing emotional distress. The third time, the judge refused a delay. Morning of mediation. I dressed in a navy blazer that made me feel like someone who owned both her choices and her mistakes. Jessica arrived late, cheeks blotchy, parents flanking her like bookends. She couldn't meet my eyes. The mediator explained protocols. Jessica's lawyer offered a settlement, a modest cash payment, plus written apology if I dropped the civil suit. I listened, watched her twist a tissue until it shredded, and realized I felt nothing. No desire to punish, no urge to forgive. What I wanted was distance, a life where their crises could no longer breach my walls. So I countered, "Pay the legal fees, repair my credit, sign any document the court requires acknowledging the fraud. After that, we each go our separate ways, permanently." My voice didn't shake. It was as steady as the wheel Cal kept praising. They huddled, whispered, weighed odds. Eventually, Jessica nodded, tears sliding unimpeded. The agreement was drafted, signed, notarized within the hour. When it was over, I walked out first, leaving them beneath the buzz of fluorescent lights. That night, I placed the notarized release in a fire-safe box under my bed, next to a growing collection of pottery pieces, crooked mugs, bowls with accidental waves. You could trace my learning curve in every wobble and scar, and somehow that made them beautiful. I brewed chamomile tea, curled on the couch, and whispered into the quiet apartment, "I owe them nothing." The words felt weightless, like breath on glass, but they left behind a clear view of the future, part courage, part clay, entirely mine. I used to think happy endings always sounded like trumpets, big brassy flourishes that announced, "We made it reality." It turns out is softer. My ending began with something as unglamorous as a locksmith and a fresh coat of paint. 2 weeks after the mediation, I finally moved out of the shoebox apartment where every wall still echoed that first phone call from the bank. I signed a 12-month lease on a modest duplex across town, built in the 70s, avocado green tile, still clinging to the kitchen backsplash like a bad memory. The place smelled of dust and possibility. While the locksmith swapped out the locks, I painted the living room wall a reckless shade of sunrise orange. Each brushstroke felt like pressing delete on a chapter nobody else was allowed to edit. Cal, My pottery instructor turned accidental friend showed up with pizza and a drop cloth. We popped open cheap seltzers, balanced the box on upturned paint cans, and ate standing up. He asked if I planned to keep taking classes. I shrugged and said I'm not sure if I was ever good, but the clay never lied to me. That made him grin. That's the whole point, he replied. Clay tells the truth quicker than people do. When he left, I wandered room to room barefoot, listening to floorboards creak under new ownership. I'd bought secondhand furniture on Facebook Marketplace, a corduroy couch the color of wet sand, a dining table scarred with pencil marks from some kid's homework battles. Nothing matched, but every piece came with a story, stories I chose, not ones my family forced on me. The settlement check arrived by certified mail, an amount large enough to cover my legal fees, repair my credit, and leave a safety cushion, but not so large that Jessica could call it life-ruining. She had borrowed money from my parents to pay it. Dad dipped into a retirement fund, Mom pawned her jewelry, and for once, I felt no guilt. My therapist, Dr. Hayes, called it natural consequences. I called it gravity. You step off a ledge, you fall. Simple physics, nothing vindictive about it. I hired a financial planner, Ms. Tran, who spoke in soothing spreadsheets. First order of business, she said, was building a 6-month emergency fund. Second was opening a Roth IRA. The responsible daughter in me felt seen this time on my own terms. I kept thinking how bizarre it was I'd been branded the reliable one all my life, yet I'd never actually owned reliability outright. It had always been a service I performed for others, unpaid and unthanked. Now it was mine to keep. Summer ripened. On weeknights, I biked the Greenway Trail after work, chasing twilight until the street lamps buzzed on. Cal sometimes tagged along. Sometimes it was just me, the river, and the echo of cicadas. I felt my lungs expand past the old borders of anxiety, as if the muscles had discovered an extra inch of rib cage. And then, without warning, the letters began. One from Mom, one from Dad, several from Jessica. They arrived in tattered envelopes, each return address different, because they'd sold the lake house and were bouncing between rentals. I lined them up on the mantel like artifacts in a museum. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C. Apologies, half apologies, metaphors about broken bridges, requests for a fresh start. Jessica's letters were the messiest ink blots where tears or coffee had smeared the words, please and sorry, into mud. I didn't open any of them. I told Dr. Hayes I was afraid curiosity would masquerade as compassion and drag me back into their orbit. She suggested a ritual. Choose a time, open one letter a week, read it aloud, then decide keep or discard, respond, or stay silent. Make the choice conscious, she said. Power lives in choosing. So every Sunday evening after I watered the succulents on the window ledge, I opened exactly one envelope. Mom's first. I sat at the dining table, phone on silent, breathing through my nose like Dr. Hayes taught me. Dear Emily, it began, no words can express. And there they were, excuses dressed as reflections, accountability dodged behind phrases like, we were desperate, and we never thought it would hurt you. I felt my pulse quicken, old anger trying to stand up, but underneath was something sturdier, discernment. I folded the letter, slid it into a folder labeled Read, and wrote on the inside flap, no action required. Dad's letter the following week was shorter, full of bullet point logic about pensions, interest rates, how it just made sense on paper. I nearly laughed. On paper, a perfect description of my family's love looked tidy until you touched it and found the ink still wet. Into the folder it went. No action required. Jessica's first letter, 4 pages single-spaced, came with a printed quote from some self-help blog about forgiveness setting you free. She begged for a coffee meeting. She said therapy wasn't really sticking. She said she'd started selling handmade candles online to offset debt, and maybe I'd like a discount code, I scrawled on the folder flap. Boundaries stronger than wax. No action required. After the last envelope was opened, the folder felt heavier than its paper contents. But the weight wasn't dread, it was clarity. I placed it in the back of my filing cabinet behind utilities and insurance forms, a reminder that history could be documented without being replayed. In early September, Cal invited me to a local art fair where his ceramics collective rented a booth. He offered me a corner of the table if you're brave enough to show the world your wobbly cups. I laughed and said yes because fear was a muscle I wanted to stretch, not avoid. I priced my pieces low, $10 here, $15 there, thinking nobody buys amateur pottery when mass-produced perfection sits 2 aisles over. But people did buy. A woman with silver braids ran her fingers along the rim of a sky-blue bowl and whispered, "There's personality in the wobble." A teenager chose a mug with a crooked handle, declaring it TikTok aesthetic. By noon, more than half my inventory was gone. Every sale felt like a small apology from the universe for the signatures stolen in my name. Late afternoon, as we packed up the unsold pieces, Cal nudged me. "How does it feel?" "Like my life has fingerprints now," I said. "That's the point," he answered, echoing his first lesson. Clay tells the truth faster than people. October rolled in crisp and gold. I spent a Saturday hanging string lights across the tiny backyard, then invited a handful of colleagues for chili and board games. We played until midnight, laughing at inside jokes that hadn't existed 6 months ago. At some point, I caught myself scanning the group, wondering if any of them would secretly forge my name one day. The thought vanished as quickly as it came, chased off by a louder truth. Trust is a risk worth taking, and I refused to let betrayal rent space in every friendship. Later that night, after everyone left, I stood under the lights alone. The yard smelled like fallen leaves and leftover spice. I remembered being a kid catching fireflies in a jar, while Jessica complained the bugs were gross. I opened my fists and pretended I was letting all the old ghosts out. Winter arrived with a thin, showy snowfall the local news hyped as snowpocalypse. Schools closed, businesses followed suit. I worked from home, laptop balanced on a thrift store desk, wearing fuzzy socks and sipping cocoa. Around noon, a text flashed on my phone from an unknown number. "It's Jessica. Emergency. Please call." My chest tightened. Old reflex. I stared at the message long enough for the phone to dim. Then I opened the mediation paperwork page, 7 Clause 4. No direct contact regarding financial matters. Communication through counsel only. I forwarded the text to Mr. Warner with a brief note, FYI. He replied 3 minutes later, "I'll handle it." I spent the rest of the snow day building a lopsided snowcat in the front yard, complete with whiskers made from twigs. Neighbors walking dogs waved. One asked if I took commissions. I pretended to negotiate 2 hot chocolates per sculpture. We laughed. The snowcat melted in 2 days, but every time I opened the front door, I saw footprints in the slush, evidence that connection had stopped. By said hello, and left me smiling. In March, Ms. Tran and I reviewed my finances over almond croissants. My emergency fund was healthy, retirement on track, and a travel budget glinted like a plane ticket on the horizon. She asked if I had family obligations to consider aging parents' college funds for nieces or nephews. I shook my head. Not anymore. I'm the only name in my ledger. It sounded lonely, but it felt clean. That night I booked a long weekend flight to Portland, a city I'd never seen. I chose a guest house with a clawfoot tub and a view of the Willamette River. I emailed Cal, think the Clay Collective would survive without me for 4 days. He sent back a thumbs-up emoji and a joke about missing my signature wobbles. Portland was drizzly and green and smelled like roasted coffee. I wandered Powell's books for hours, tracing spines, buying novels I'd promised myself I'd read someday. I hiked Forest Park, let moss soak into my sneakers, and realized my life was expanding. No grand gestures, just a series of doorways I'd finally noticed were open. Back home, spring unveiled daffodils along the duplex fence line. I planted herbs in mismatched pots, labeling them with dollar store sticks, basil, mint, courage. One Saturday morning, I caught myself humming while watering them. I didn't recognize the tune, which made sense. My life was composing original music now. The next letter from Jessica came certified, which meant official. I accepted it, heartbeat steady, and opened it at the kitchen counter. Inside was a single page. I've entered a debt relief program. The counselor says I need to make amends one last time. I know you don't owe me forgiveness, but I'm sorry. I'm also pregnant. Due in November. I hope this baby grows up learning better habits than I did. I reread the letter twice. Surprise flickered, followed by a softer emotion whose name I couldn't grasp. Not forgiveness, something less tidy. Recognition, maybe. Babies are blank pages, and I wanted this one to start with a cleaner story than mine. I folded the letter and slipped it into the folder, writing "New Life, New Lane." No action required. Yet. July marked 1 year since the bank's call. I commemorated the day by driving to the ocean 3 hours east, windows down, music loud. At the shore, I walked barefoot across hot sand, then waded ankle-deep into waves that tugged like playful thieves. I closed my eyes and let the horizon widen my lungs. I thought about all the invisible contracts we sign without noticing. Be the easy child. Absorb the fallout. Smile, nod, pay the bill. Breaking those contracts hadn't made me hard. It had made me honest. Honest felt like sunshine on saltwater, sting and warmth at the same time. On the drive back, I rehearsed how I'd describe the past year if anyone bothered to ask. Something simple like, I learned that family can be a verb you choose, not just a noun you inherit. Or maybe I stopped calling loyalty what was really silence. The phrasing didn't matter as much as the fact I could say it without my throat locking up. Late summer, Cal and I rented a booth at the big regional craft fair. I unveiled a new series, bowls with jagged edges intentionally left untrimmed, glazed midnight blue, so the raw clay peeked through like fault lines. I called them my honesty bowls. Everyone sold. A gallery owner asked if I'd consider a solo exhibit next year. I said I'd think about it, but inside a part of me already whispered yes. That night back at my duplex, Cal stayed for takeout, Thai, and Netflix. Between chopstick bites, he nudged an envelope my way. Early birthday gift, he said. Inside was a business card, Carter Clay Company, embossed in teal. My throat tightened again, but not from fear. We made a pact I'd apply for a vendor license, he'd help with kiln space. Partnership properly notarized by laughter and pad thai sauce. September brought Jessica's baby shower invite via email. The subject line read, "No pressure, but I wanted you to know." Attached was an ultrasound photo, tiny profile, fist raised like a question. I stared at the image, heart warring with head. Dr. Hayes had warned me forgiveness is a door you can open slowly or never at all, but rushing through is how you sprain your peace. I hit reply, typed, "Thank you for sharing. Wishing you both health," and pressed send. Nothing more. Door cracked, not flung wide. The first kiln firing for Carter Clay Company happened on a chilly October evening. Cal and I stood outside the studio, heat seeping through the metal walls, smelling like campfire and rain. When the timer beeped, we opened the hatch and peered in rows of bowls, mugs, vases glowing like embers. I felt my shoulders loosen, realization settling. I used to think survival was the opposite of creation. Turns out they're cousins. One clears the ground, the other plants seeds. We celebrated with greasy tacos and sparkling water, toasting paper cups. To new chapters, Cal said. I added, and to never letting anyone else write the dedication page. November arrived with the news Jessica had delivered a healthy baby girl named Hope. A mutual cousin texted me photos, soft cheeks, eyes shut tight against hospital lights. I stared longer than I intended, then tucked the phone away. Dr. Hayes would be proud. I felt the emotion fully, then let it exit stage, left no encore. That weekend, I mailed a small box to the newborn inside a palm-sized ceramic star-glazed sunrise orange, the exact shade of my living room wall. No note, no return address, just a star delivered to a fresh universe. On New Year's Eve, I invited friends to the duplex for potluck. The wobbly cup community had grown potters, co-workers, neighbors. The locksmith who had changed my locks now brought sourdough starter. We counted down to midnight, popped confetti, kissed cheeks, clinked mismatched mugs. I looked around and realized I'd built something my childhood never promised, a family that didn't require paperwork or suffering to prove itself. At 12:04 a.m., when the noise settled into playlists and half-eaten desserts, I slipped outside. Stars pinpricked the sky. I breathed cold air and whispered, "I'm free." The words didn't echo, they landed softly, absorbed by the night, as if the universe was nodding back. I thought about that first phone call again, how it had cracked my life open like a fault line. But cracks, I'd learned, aren't just breaks, they're invitations for light to seep in. And light, once it enters, starts looking for other dark corners to claim. So here's my trumpetless ending. A woman standing under winter stars, feet steady on ground. She chose heart, steady in a chest that finally fits. No grand chords, just a quiet hum that sounds exactly like truth, and that is enough.